All right, I Am Salt Lake podcast listeners, this is Chris. I am excited to share this brand new podcast with you guys. I wanted to put it in the I Am Salt Lake feed so you guys could check it out. This is a brand new podcast I'm doing called Utah in the Weeds. I'm doing it with Tim Pickett. You guys might remember him from episode 420. Anyway, this is going to be an awesome podcast where we interview those involved in the cannabis industry, conversations with patients. We're going to have cannabis news and so much more. Utah, Salt Lake City, we got our first dispensary this past week. I am super excited about it. That's one of the reasons I decided to finally start this podcast, because there's so many people here in Salt Lake City that I want to talk to. I want to get their story. So I said, hey, let's do another podcast. Let's call it Utah in the Weeds. I asked Tim Pickett to come and do the podcast with me because I felt like him and we had such great chemistry on that episode 420. It's been a lot of fun doing it. We got some great interviews. We got some great conversations coming up. So if you can, wherever you're subscribed to this podcast, if you can go subscribe to that podcast, again, it's called Utah in the Weeds. We're an Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, basically wherever you listen to podcasts, go subscribe to it. Here is episode 2. This is a conversation that we had with David Sutherland. He is a medical cannabis patient here in Utah. So it was really fun to bring him into the podcast studio, have him share a little bit about his story, about how he got off pills and what cannabis has done for him, as well as some of the obstacles that he's had to overcome with cannabis. So anyway, I just wanted to share this episode with you all. Please subscribe to it. It would mean so much to Tim and myself. So this is episode 2 of Utah in the Weeds. So this is the second episode of Utah in the Weeds. We're back again, Tim, on another episode.
Hello, Utah in the Weeds.
We don't hate each other
Episode
yet.
number 2.
So we finally got an Apple Podcast. We're in Spotify, Stitcher. We should be in all the podcast outlets. So make sure to subscribe, leave a review. The dispensaries are open, though, Tim.
Yes, the dispensaries are absolutely open. And one dispensary is open.
Everybody is freaking out because they're not getting their cards. The cards aren't going in the system. The world is ending.
Yes. So the world didn't end on Sunday when they opened the system. And basically the Utah got medical marijuana legally. Monday, they actually did get cards delivered to people's emails on Monday, but it took having somebody from the Utah Department of Health at the dispensary helping people navigate through that application process because the software is kind of cumbersome. And we're here with David Sutherland.
Yeah, I forgot to introduce we have a special guest today.
Yes.
Hello. Actually, do you want to introduce David Sutherland?
Yeah, so David Sutherland has graciously offered to appear on the podcast. Can you appear on a podcast? Anyway, he is... Can we announce that? Is that something we can announce that you are patient
number 1?
Patient number 1.
Patient number
Literally.
1 on...
Yes, his card is number 1.
Oh, no kidding.
I was the first person approved.
No
the state
kidding.
Of Utah, yes.
Yeah,
Wow,
it's a big deal.
How rad is that, man?
Yeah.
I find it pretty rad.
And you actually are one of the people that actually got to buy some product on Monday.
Yes, I did.
And I think only like 14 or 16
I think there
people,
were 14 of us.
14. Was it pretty cool in there, man? Like,
yeah, it was. Reminded me of any dispensary that I've been in any other state.
I saw some pictures. I mean, yeah, again, it looks just like any other dispensary. I was a little worried that they were going to make it too much like a Walgreens or something, right? Like they had to like fit into that pharmacy look.
Right. It looks more like an Apple store.
Yeah, absolutely.
Me, right?
Yeah, it does. It was really nice looking. It was really well laid out. Excited to see all the product once it gets in there, though.
And this is Dragonfly down at 711 South State Street.
Correct.
I was actually impressed too. They're selling the what do you call them? Vaporizers. So you can
dry herb vaporizers, and they also have batteries for the vape carts as well.
Yeah, I saw
and
that.
Grinders.
Oh wow! So they have some extra stuff that you need to avoid the flame.
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, right. That's good. Tell us a little bit about your story, David.
Oh, okay. 8 years ago, I was in a car accident and I burst my L1 vertebrae at 60%. Usually at 30% burst fracture, you're not likely to walk again. I also broke my sternum, 8-9 ribs, had a concussion. Spent 2 years in rehab, out of work, learning how to walk again and move around. And I deal with neuropathy, chronic pain in my back, and muscle spasm. The muscle spasms come from when they had to bolt me back together, they had to rotate my hips relative to my shoulders to get my spine to fit back together and to allow, I have a large bone spur that impinges 13 millimeters into my spinal canal and pinches my spinal cord. So they had to move it around so they can get me back together. But it was really awkward at the beginning to have your hips pointing one way and your shoulders pointing another way.
So another question that I have is about the regimen of medications. Like, tell me about the drug regimen that they put you on or that you had to be on at the time and like through the rehab process.
Okay, so I was 90 days in a brace from my hips to my shoulders. It's like a tortoise shell. And anytime I was out of bed, that's what I had to wear for 90 days. Anything dropped on the floor, it was gone. I couldn't get down to it, so that was a learning process. As far as medications, I was doing probably about 200 Vicodins a month. I was on gabapentin, Celebrex. After a while, I became depressed and it got very, very depressed. I was on antidepressants. I was on anti-anxiety meds, 5 different muscle relaxers, just all kinds of chemicals every month for 2 years.
Yeah, I just with all those side effects too of those.
Yes.
Right. I just want to hear. I mean, I think it's really important for people to hear. Like, this is standard medicine, and I'm not saying that it's bad because this is what we have. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, these are our options. This is what we use. This is what's FDA approved. Like when you actually say it out loud and you look back. It is a pile.
It is a pile. It's shocking. And I also ended up, after my accident, we ended up getting pregnant. So I had a small child at home as well. After,
if you dropped the child, was the child gone too? And when you were
I was out of the brace by that point. But yeah, I mean, just having a small child around too, and all those chemicals around was
well, and a small child is exhausting.
Yes.
I have a 2-year-old myself, so I know what that's all about.
Yeah, yes. I remember that.
It wasn't easy. Let's just say that. I mean, during my recovery, just my recovery was very intense and very long and very painful and slow. And, I was sitting at home every day, if I wasn't going to therapy.
So what do you do for work now?
I do IT work for the state.
When did you decide, like, what did it look like when you decided to explore something different than the prescription medications you were on?
I was very, very excited to get off the prescriptions, but very nervous, especially with having a family, about going the cannabis route, and worried about the potential, problems that could create with law enforcement.
Who introduced you to that, or was it on your own?
It was on my own.
Did you talk to your doctors about this? I mean, what did orthopedics, the spine surgeon?
I had told my doctors after I'd made a trip to Colorado, and actually that's a pretty funny story. I won the lottery on a camping trip and hit Powerball, and for a small amount, like $10,000, and I went over to Cheyenne to cash in the ticket, and then immediately went to Fort Collins and spent $500 in the dispensary there, and I haven't looked back.
So was that the first time you ever used cannabis?
Oh no, I had used cannabis when I was younger.
Oh, okay, I was going to say
recreationally, but never really as medicine. I never really thought of it as medicine. I mean, over the years, I'd heard about it in other states that had medical programs, and I'm from the Northeast. And, my parents live in Maine. They've had a long-standing medical program, and actually one of the better ones in the country.
So were people around you talking about starting to use it, or nobody was saying, "Oh boy, Dave, you should really try cannabis because you need to get off of all those
I was looking to get off all of that stuff, and I knew Colorado had gone recreational, so I was looking to try it. I was just waiting for the opportunity to get over there, get in the dispensary, and start experimenting.
Are you on any meds now then?
I don't. cannabis.
Well, well, there. Okay.
Yeah,
besides cannabis,
I don't take any pharmaceuticals.
So, how long after starting to take cannabis did you get off of your meds? And
it was probably about I'm saying about a 6 and 9 month process.
Okay.
You know, I went to my doctors and they had told me if you test positive for cannabis, we're going to cut you off of all your meds.
No kidding.
Did they ever test you?
Yes, they did. He tested me right after I walked out of there, and they promptly cut me off because I tested positive. But I had been trying to taper down my dosages
already.
So I had enough to at least make me through and it was still a pretty bad withdrawal, especially from gabapentin. That stuff was the worst.
I think that so you really bring up a good point, because that's still an issue that I deal with my patients now, right? This fear that they're going to be cut off. And the threat is real.
It's real.
It's still there.
And they did it to me.
Yeah. And they did it to you, and they still are threatening patients today with that ultimatum. Like, I'll write you a card. You can take cannabis, but boom, I'm cutting you off. And I think that patients should know that they're proven to be synergistic. Opioids or narcotics and cannabis can be synergistic. It can allow patients to reduce the dose, but nobody was there to help you.
Correct.
But it sounds like you were starting down that path before.
Yes, I had an idea. I wanted to go that way, and I wasn't feeling good. I was super depressed. I knew I was addicted to these things. And I had a young child at home, so it was, I need to do something. I need to get off. I need to come up with a plan. I brought it up with my doctors. They weren't open to it. And then, I hit the lottery there and went over and bought some product, and I came back and Louis was up front with them. And I said, hey, for the past 2 years, I've been having these, bad muscle spasms, and nothing we do is working. Physical therapy, muscle relaxers. I've tried them all. I mean, we were even doing somas, and nothing was relieving them. I said, I got to try something else. And, and then I came back, and I told him, and he promptly said,
yep,
you're done. On the way out the door.
Wow.
How long ago was this?
I think it was in the third year of my recovery.
So
I've been doing this for probably a good 4 years.
Okay.
3 years full time now with cannabis.
Well, the only reason I ask is because you were saying how doctors are still, or Tim was saying, I'm pointing at Tim here and I forget we're not video, but
right.
You were saying doctors are cutting people off. Are they still, even though in Utah is technically it's a medical, doctors recommend cannabis, they're going to still cut people off?
Yes, they still have a pain contract, and every provider can decide on their own whether or not to cut people off or to do both together.
Wow.
And there just still isn't because it's not FDA approved, there's no guidelines for the use of cannabis and opioids together, and you have to explore that on your own as a provider. Most providers just aren't there yet. They're too busy. They've learned how to use opioids and use gabapentin and use the muscle relaxers, and that's what they were taught, and so that's what they're going to still do. And because it's still Schedule I, they're afraid sometimes of the liability of using both at the same time. And there's still just a lack of education. In some circles, I think it's getting better. What are your and I guess this would be a question for you, is what do your doctors say now?
I haven't really spent much time with my doctors in the last 2 years, but I mean, they knew what I was doing. They didn't necessarily agree with it, but they saw it was working for me. I never really asked what they thought about it. But they knew what I was up to.
So what would you say? What would you say to patients or providers? What would you say to medical providers? Like, what's the decision-making process to go this route, and why is that important for you as a patient?
I would think, I mean, if I'm the one that's suffering with whatever condition it may be, and I determine that, hey, 2 years into this, like, we're not really getting anywhere. Can we explore something else? I mean, I think that should be my decision. Don't you?
Well, I think it should.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris agrees. And I think we all agree. I think the patient should have a say in what they do. I like to be involved. We were taught to be controlling a little bit, and it fits our personalities, a lot of us.
I mean, from my experience, I would like to see, like, hey, you've made the decision to go to cannabis. the doctor would say, hey, okay, we'll work with you and let's try weaning you off these meds and then you know, make your way to cannabis. Instead of, you know, like me, was just like, hey, you know, luckily I was wise enough to, you know, taper my meds down the month or two prior, because I knew that was the likely outcome. So I said, you know, I don't want to leave myself with nothing and you know, spend 3 weeks in withdrawals, which I pretty much did anyway, because that gabapentin was nasty stuff to get off of.
Say you never started using cannabis, right? And you continued using all those pills over these last 4 years.
I'd probably be dead now.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like what, I mean, your life, you seem...
During my depression, I mean, I was suicidal. I was thinking of offing myself just about every day. I mean, it was just so bad. I mean, think about it. 2 months in horrific pain, and basically you're sitting at home by yourself. And you know, I could barely get out. You know, I could barely get around. Over time, you know, more and more. But you know, during the day, you know, my wife's at work. You know, my child's off at daycare, and I'm just sitting home in pain. You know, watching TV.
So, what do you think the difference is between feeling like you felt on all of those medications, or even as you were weaning down, and feeling like you feel now using cannabis? You say you're in IT, and I mean that takes a high level of caffeination, so to speak, right?
Yes.
So what does that look like, or what's the comparison between the old you and the new you?
I think it's night and day. I mean, my head's so much clearer now. I mean. I'm not depressed anymore, which is huge. But yeah, just so much clearer, so much happier. I just feel calmer.
What do you think the risks are of your cannabis use, like from the other side? Like what are the cautions for people? What are the things that you've learned as a patient that you could say to somebody else, okay, watch out for this because really this is X?
Well, I mean, first thing, it's like everything we talk about in cannabis. I mean, start low and then build up from there. I mean, you don't want to walk into a dispensary and, you know, pop a 25 milligram edible in your mouth if you've never used it before. You know, and even me with the pain that I have, I don't even go to that level. You know, for me, and you know, what you find with cannabis, it's just so different for everybody. You know, I can get by with a microdose during the day as long as it just takes the edge off, you know, and I'm just writhing in pain. You know, I'm fine. And then at night when my pain is more progressed, you know, especially when I lie down and sleep, that's when my neuropathy really comes out. You know, and then I can flip the switch and go a little heavier.
I think the difference between what you felt like before and what you feel like now is a lot of the curiosity that patients on pain medicines bring me is they don't understand what life is going to be like off of them, but they can tell that there's something different than what exists now for them. They're on, you know, people from just 10 milligrams of Norco a day to, you know, 240 milligrams of morphine a day. And they just don't know. They think there's something else out there.
Well, yeah. And after a while, it becomes your normal. You know, that way you're feeling becomes your normal. And you don't really notice that you're, you know, like kind of out of it all the time.
What would you say to patients who are afraid? I run into quite a few patients who are afraid that by using cannabis and lowering their pain medicine, they're just going to be in more pain. They're really afraid to give up some of that pain medicine.
Well, I mean, I just talk to my own experience. I mean, you have nothing to worry about. I mean, I think it does better for my pain than the opioids ever did. You know, opioids never really did anything for my neuropathic pain. And the way I look at opioids versus cannabis, opioids, it's kind of hard to describe what it does to the pain. I mean, it's still there. It still hurts. It's still in your mind. It's just lessened a little bit. You know, I was never really pain free. But cannabis, you know, on the same note, I'm never really pain free. But the great thing about cannabis is it just kind of distracts you. So you're not even really thinking about your pain. I mean, I'm always going to have underlying pain. It's just that, you know, if I can't get past the pain and that's all that I'm thinking about, it's hard to do anything else in your life.
You bring up a perfect, like it's textbook, right? What you say, it's kind of distracting, right? Yes. That it is that disassociation from your pain. It's not that the pain leaves you, right? They describe this in the books that it's not really the pain is away, but you can you don't have to focus on it.
Yeah, she can
Right.
compartmentalize
Yes.
it, or however you say that word.
Compartmentalize, yes.
It's just over in a box on the side, and you know it's there, but it just doesn't really bother you right in the moment. It's kind of hard to explain.
Right. Chris, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts about this, because here you have a guy across from the table with you, and he's got this very specific relationship with cannabis.
Yeah.
From a patient point of view, and like your experience with cannabis is not exactly the medical side.
I think it's great. Honestly, I've never, obviously gone through something like you have gone through. And so I couldn't imagine what it would be like to deal with that pain. But in my opinion, you should be allowed, if you feel like cannabis can work for you, you're the one who has to live in your body, right? Like you're the one who's having to deal with your pain. And so if you're telling the doctor, yo, hey, this stuff is going to work for me. Other states already, especially at that point, 4 years ago.
Yes.
California's, these states have been using it medically.
Decades.
It wasn't like you had this weird idea. People do it all the time. So, I think it's kind of messed up personally, but
yeah, I think so.
I would be upset.
What does the ideal patient pathway look like to you for a new patient who wants to come into the cannabis world, who wants to try it? Like, what do you want the doctor to say? Well, I guess, that's a question to anybody.
With the medical cannabis, like it's running now, would doctors still say they would cut you off from that? Or, I guess we can't speak for doctors.
No, we can't. But I spoke to one on Monday who basically was going to do that to a patient before I called him.
Okay. And that's what I didn't know if that was a
And I think we talk together and we say, okay, look, here's the deal. We're going to not increase the opioids. We're going to give this a try for 6 months. We're going to see if we can get the patient off of some decreased, right? We're going to dial this thing down. And if it works, great. And I'm pretty confident it's going to work. Right?
I am too.
Right. I think that this discussion is just reinforces that confidence.
That's the way the conversation should go. Going forward, I ran into it with my own doctors, when I went to go get my recommendation, my letter, nobody was interested in doing it, even though they knew this is what I've been doing for years. So, something's got to change in that system. Something. Yeah,
I think ideally you come to me and I'm able to communicate with your providers like openly, like normal medicine. And we say, okay, look, I'm an expert in cannabis. I'm going to help guide this patient in a way that helps them get off or do what they want to do, right? They have goals and we're going to try to use cannabis to achieve those goals.
I think we even talked about it in the last episode, Tim, is how doctors are really just scared. It's not so much like, I don't know your doctor, obviously, personally, David, but in the back of his head, he's probably like, you know what? I know that works, but I just can't say it does, right? Like they're just scared.
Yeah.
Because they probably know it works.
Yeah.
Come on.
Gosh, I think all three of us are like, well, it's just so obvious that it works.
This is 2020.
And you still have the reefer madness, the devil's lettuce out there, know, and a fair amount of my medical team was, probably in their, late 50s, 60s. So, they have a different view of cannabis than probably the younger generation does.
It's crazy when you find those people that still are stuck that it's this horrible thing.
Right. Just like, I think we have, like we've talked about before. I think the medical community has a really unique and important role to play in destigmatizing the plant. And I think we need to be engaged, right? In the patient safety aspect, we need to be helping people on both sides, right? Here's what to watch out for. If you're going to try this on your own, here's what to watch out for. Here's the beginnings of the recommendations. So what do you think, David, what do you think the state of medical cannabis in Utah looks like right now?
Right now?
3 days in.
3 days in? Yeah. Personally, for me, looks fantastic. I'm very, very excited about this program. I think it's actually going to work out to be a really great program from what I saw at Dragon Wellness the other day. People that want to subsidize health for people that can't afford it, I mean, that's a great thing to come to this community and to be patient driven and not profit driven.
Mm-hmm.
I was really
what was the
impressed by
process when you went into the dispensary? Now, I had written some recommendations. You had dosing and guideline recommendations. What did that look like as you entered the pharmacy with your card? Like, what was the process?
I went in. I was called into an office with their pharmacist, and we had a discussion. And
you did the meeting, the PMD meeting. They
Correct.
did that with
Yes.
you, even though you don't technically need it.
Correct. Yes, they did.
Okay.
And it was kind of brief because he was asking me, if I had ever used cannabis, and I explained my situation that I've been doing this for 3 years, pretty much full time. So, I kind of have taught myself through reading and trial and error and what works for me. And so basically, that discussion was fairly brief and was kind of driven by me. It's like, hey, this is what I do. This is what I'm looking for. He was very open to it and, very nice about it.
Now, this is the pharmacist that they are required to have it, or this
Yes.
so this person doesn't have a whole lot of training, even though with cannabis, though, either.
Yeah. What did you feel like their experience level was?
Oh, don't be scared.
4 hours.
I'd probably say a little bit more in depth than the average person, but I'm not saying it's you or Ward down there. Like that guy had a wealth.
Right.
Of knowledge.
He doesn't want to see. He's afraid they'll take his card away.
I know, right? Okay, if the pharmacist doesn't have enough training.
I'm not worried about it.
Right. So I think it's interesting because the pharmacist, I spoke to the pharmacist before they opened. And I asked them specifically about the recommendations. Mm-hmm. Are these recommendations working? And they still met with you. But,
yes.
It's okay.
Yeah. Well,
and they don't have enough people to not meet with everybody.
Understand it. I mean, they don't know me. So,
Sure.
So they didn't know my story and my history with it. Like just take the woman sitting next to me at the press conference. Mm-hmm. She probably needed some guidance on what she's looking for. Sure. For a person like that would probably be, the ideal person to go in. And maybe they're just going to play it as, hey, what's your history with it? Like they did with me. And that would be a good thing too. Did
they review the computer screen when you were meeting with them, or it was just face to face and that's
introduce ourselves. He wanted to hear my story. I told him and.
Okay, well, this is an evolving thing, right, for
Mm-hmm.
patients in this meeting and how that works out. I'm interested because I'm giving some of those dosing and delivery guidelines, and I want to know what changes between leaving the office and buying the product. Right?
Well, it's important to stay on the same page. It's for you too, and for the patient too, and for the pharmacist too.
Yes. And with somebody like David, I mean, you can really trust that he's going to go down there and it's going to be safe, right? He's experienced, he knows what he's getting. But like you were saying, I mean, there is plenty of people you could pick out that they really have to be educated all along the way. The products that they purchase need to be very specific.
Or even how to use some of it. I mean,
right.
Like how to use a dry herb vaporizer, how much tincture do you use? And that was the other thing I noticed. There was no like strength or like, hey, this dropper gives you 10 milligrams on my tincture, anything. So I had to take the 500 milligrams, figure it out in milliliters because the dropper was in milliliters to try to figure out my dosage because at this point now, 3 years in, I know my dose and what I need at certain times a day. And if my pain kicks up, how
many milligrams?
Yeah, how many milligrams do I need? Like during the day, I like to microdose. So it's, like today it was, I'm doing 4-to-1 tincture, which I picked up there. I haven't done a 4-to-1 CBD to THC. So it's 4 parts CBD to 1 part THC. So today, like I did, what was it? 6 milligrams CBD, 2 milligrams THC.
Right. So for folks that don't understand,
clear-headed, no pain in my lower body.
Right. Very good for neuropathy because you're getting a 4-to-1 ratio with the neuroprotective CBD.
Yeah, the THC amplifies the CBD, and the CBD kind of takes away from the euphoric feeling of THC, but at the same time kind of heightens its anti-pain.
Huh.
Yeah, they really work together. It'll be interesting to see when you get a chance to try some Delta 8. So the THC is a Delta 9, and then I guess you adjust the molecule. And it's really exciting in Utah because they're developing products that are very, very specific for certain types of conditions to increase cellular uptake of the CBD and really increase the anti-inflammatory effects for the neuropathy, especially for a patient like you, or anxiety. This is the 4-to-1 ratio. That'd be a great tincture for a patient with anxiety. It may be, I can't say it will be for you on the radio or on the podcast.
It's so person specific, to find your dose. But what I liked about there too, it's full spectrum. I notice, like, if I take an isolate versus a full spectrum tincture, I notice a difference. Like the isolate, so that's basically just THC in the tincture with no other cannabinoids in there, sometimes not even any terpenes or anything. It gives me almost like that. I just drank a cup of coffee after I haven't drinking coffee in a while, like that anxious feeling in my chest, whereas the full spectrum products don't. And I love that they're doing everything's full spectrum down.
They're really kind of a farm to table or seed to sale.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Seed to sale. That's what they call it in the cannabis industry, right?
What are their prices like? Everybody's asking prices. Are they pretty fair? Or what?
I actually think when you factor in that there's no taxes and it's just a $3 transaction fee, whether you spend $50 or $5,000, it's $3 transaction fee is all the state gets. I think it comes out cheaper than Colorado.
Why no taxes? Is that?
I didn't even know that. I thought they were going to charge sales tax.
No,
but there's no sales tax.
$3 transaction fee, whether you spend $5 or $5,000.
So interesting. I mean, this is really good news.
So Windover charges 21% tax, right?
Yes. I'm not sure what they charge for medical patients. A lot of states, like on the recreational side, they're recreational and medical, they'll like less taxes or no taxes on the medical side, and then high taxes on the.
Yeah, I think it went over. It's 21.
If you got your letter here in Utah and you're going to another state, you can't use your letter to get a medical discount. I've heard maybe in Nevada, but definitely not Colorado.
There are very specific. There's specific requirements to use it in Nevada. And you have to have a physician in Nevada. Their law is physician only, like a PA or an NP. Those letters don't exist in Nevada.
So you would have to go see somebody, get a temporary card.
Right. Oh. It's not really. I don't know.
Convenient.
It's not convenient.
I kind of have mixed feelings about this tax thing. I'm stuck on this because the state could have really done some really good stuff with that tax money, though.
Right.
And then they would have got excited about cannabis a little bit. I'm happy because obviously I save money as a consumer.
Right, but in Washington, they've used that tax money for so many good programs.
Colorado, too.
Yeah,
Nevada,
but I think that's all on the recreational side.
Oh, is it?
I'm not sure. We should look up because I don't think many states charge tax on the medical side.
What's your view on recreational versus medical?
Yeah, I think it should be fully legal. But
it's okay. We can be honest here.
I'm just trying to formulate my answer here.
Who's going to listen at your job.
I'm extremely happy to have the medical option here. And actually kind of like what Ward said at Dragonfly the other day, that like by Utah only going medical, we can actually focus on the patients. And I don't want to take away from Joe E. Stoner out there that wants to get, recreational, cannabis. Like, I'm all for that too. But, I really think the patients should come first.
It's important that they get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But who would have thought Utah? Right? And I think, we said that probably on the first episode.
I know. And here we are in a place where there's not a lot of people who have cards yet. There's a lot of problems with the system navigating that website and their vendor, essentially, from both the provider side and the patient side, waiting for cards. And really, it's not that you're waiting for a card, because once you pay your fee, It's within a couple of hours you're going to get the email. It's getting to that payment. They expressed to us today that there's a significant number of applications in, but there's so many, more than half, well over half of the applications have not been certified by the QMP. Now, that doesn't mean...
Or the patient.
Or the patient, right?
That
or
accepted. One step they forgot to add in there.
Yes. Now, I mean, not to take away from the QMPs, because as far as like I'm concerned, our phone, it is off the hook. There is so much interest and pent up demand for information on this. We're 100 phone calls a day, every single day from Sunday on. It's just been overwhelming. So getting enough time to go into the system and certify people, and then if they have a problem, going back in and
then helping them
and fixing them has been really challenging. And we have a fairly small practice compared to a couple of others. I was talking to Dr. Andon today, and she has really 600 patients who all expected their card on Monday morning. And, entering 600 patients on Sunday between 9 a.m. and then getting them all. Yeah, it's just not possible.
Well, I think everybody needs to, maybe take a step back. I mean, most of the other states' programs, had lots of problems, starting up. I kind of expected it going into this, I had stocked up on my product from other state, not expecting that anything was going to be open on March 1st. I was shocked when it happened, but there's going to be bumps in the road. It's going to take a good year for it to iron out all the things. But I mean, there's some easy fixes in the meantime, like the website needs to be
fixing the website, they talked today about creating a little educational video so the patients can go on and they can watch this video even saying, look, you have to watch this video before you make your application, so that people are essentially forced to get the training.
And there's so much disinformation out there. I've been all over blogs, and people are confused and starting to get angry.
Well, I've heard the Dragonfly is going to close, and I heard that one today. I listened to the owner today tell me they're not going to close, but they only served one patient yesterday because it was, but they chose to open. Remember, they're the ones who are in business. They opened at this time. They could have opened in a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. There was no requirement for that. And so they did take a little bit of a risk from an investment standpoint, and they wanted to get the patients access to the medicine they could.
I appreciate it.
Right. And I think over the next few days, it's going to get better. Right. I mean, navigating the system is difficult.
Like you say, they just got to iron out the kinks.
I mean, they got to iron out the kinks. There's so many, there's little options that they were bringing up in a meeting today at the Capitol, and trying to decide whether to use letters to access the dispensary, which I disagree with, or try to work around it. And my suggestion was, look, you've got a system. Just work on the system. Stick with the system. It's here. Make it work for a little while. We've got to get through this wave of people, and then it'll calm down.
And then we can go back and make tweaks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else you got for David, or should we wrap this episode up?
I think we could wrap this episode up.
I think it's been really cool to hear your story and how cannabis has helped you. Let's mention how people can get a hold of you, Tim, right? Because your websites and stuff, we haven't even talked about this. Like if people want to get their cards, they can hit you up.
Absolutely. I mean, they can still call me. We are essentially, we've changed our voicemail. We are answering calls in the order they were received. So you can call us 801-851-5554. Definitely give us a call, leave us a message. We will get back to you. And go to the website, utahmarijuana.clinic, utahmarijuana.org. Those are two good websites to get information, schedule appointments if you want to learn more and have an evaluation.
And you can listen to my other podcast, I Am Salt Lake Podcast, iamsaltlake.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We got lots of episodes. Go back and listen to Tim's episode 420. That's his story.
I Am Salt Lake.
If you want to get to know him a little bit more about what he's doing and more about what he's doing with his stuff over there at his clinic. And I think that's about it. Make sure to subscribe, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you're at. I know we have a Facebook page. I haven't really done anything with that, so go like that. Make sure to subscribe because we're going to keep going.
I'm just so excited about the Apple Podcast thing. It's really...
We're there,
I
man.
mean, right? You've arrived.
Yeah.
You're on Apple.
And Tim's booking some cool people for the show.
We have got, I think our next guest, or in the next couple of episodes, going to be Blake from Zion Pharmaceuticals.
Awesome.
Who's going to come down
Nice.
and talk
I'd
to
like
us
to listen
about
to that one.
Yeah, right. On the minor cannabinoids. He has got a depth of knowledge about this plant that is,
I was blown away. I really want to spend some time with him and pick his
Yeah,
brain.
he's going to bring some really interesting products to the marketplace, specifically for just these specific conditions. So
Perfect.
stay tuned for that. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.